Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Jonny Lipsham.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Sunday Night Live on this glorious, 13th of December, 2020. Good grief, we are at the business end of the year already. It's crazy, and it's been possibly the weirdest year in the history of all years. Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, it's been a totally bizarre year, and not just because of COVID-19, but for a bunch of other reasons. It's been a bit of a fun, strange year where lots of things have happened. But that's all for next week, because next week is going to be the Christmas special. Because it'll be the last Sunday before Christmas. So we'll do that next week, and then the one after that, let me just check the calendar real quick, is going to be the 27th, and that will be the one where we do the review of the year, because the following Sunday will be January the 3rd, so we'll be in 2021 at that point. So next week, Christmas special, last Sunday Night Live before Christmas, and then we will do the review of the year on the following Sunday, which will be the 27th. So hope you guys can stick around for at least the next 2 weeks, and then we're going to kick off 2021 with some new stuff, some new content, some new ideas, some new things to do for Sunday Night Live. So that is the plan. So tonight is going to be kind of a little bit kind of easy, because I want to talk about you guys, and I want to take your questions. That's kind of the big thing. That's the big bulk of the show. Plus, I kind of want to show, just in case you haven't seen it, a cool and easy way to do gain staging in Studio One 5.1. Now, what I'm going to show you is not new to 5.1. It's actually new to 4.5, but it works especially well in 5.1. And I do have a video on my channel that shows it as well, but I wanted to show it live to you guys as well, so you get to kind of see it in action, and also in real time you can kind of ask questions about what I show you and how it works, so we can kind of go over it a little bit more step by step. So if you guys are up for that, then that is what we're going to do. But first of all, I want to see who's here. And we've only got 16 people here. So I'm hoping that we will get some more coming in the room. And already we have a donation from my very, very, very good friend, Just Bob, who says, "Merry Christmas, Johnny. God bless you and your family." Well, thank you very much. You are very kind and very generous. And I appreciate you guys very, very much. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So I want to see who's here. As I say, we've only got 16 people here. It would be awesome, super cool. Hang on, what's going on here? That should be showing it in pounds. I don't know why it's showing it in dollars. I'll sort that out later. But that's $20. Thank you very much. Very kind. So 16 people here. We're a little low on numbers, but that's okay. Hopefully more people will come in as the first kind of few minutes of the show go on. Britain Meany was the first in the door. And Britain says, "I'm excited. Hopefully my 4-year-old will allow me to tune in." Yeah, I know how that feels. I remember that only too well. My kids are 11 and 8 now, so they're that little bit older. And my show is done at midnight for me, so they should be very definitely long since in bed. So let me just close the calendar, because nobody needs to see that. There we go. Not that you were seeing it anyway. Excuse me, punching the mic. But yes, my kids are that little bit older now, and they are very definitely in bed by the time we get to the midnight hour. So that's Britain. And then we have Thomas over in the Philippines is here. John Lake says, "Nice to be back in Scotland." Hello. Hello to you, John. Welcome back. And we have Music to Motion here, and I think all my mods are here. Ken, Just Bob, and Mike is here. Mike Neighbor says, hola kids. And that is it in the chat so far. David Anthony is here. He says, greetings everyone from Australia. Awesome. So we have people on the other side of the world as well as the United States of America and the Philippines. And I think those are kind of the predominant countries that we have here tonight. So awesome. It is 7 minutes past midnight here. So David, it's probably going to be what? Lunchtime for you? Maybe mid-morning for you? Something like that. So you're probably on your mid-morning coffee or something like that. So you're going to be wide awake, unlike us in the UK, in Scotland. And certainly you guys in the United States should be wide awake because it is only 6 p.m. in the Central Time area. So there we go. So only 18 people here. So a little lower numbers, but that's okay. That's cool. We'll be fine with that. So be thinking about your questions and start typing them into the chat, okay? Whilst we move on to the next part, and we'll see how we go. And if we have to do a shorter show because there's fewer people here, then that's what we'll do. Not a problem. I don't mind doing a show that's less than an hour. I prefer to do hour-long shows, but it's up to you guys. So let's see. I hope you like my little Christmas decorations. I got Merry Christmas up there and some bells over there and then a Christmas tree over there. And we got Happy New Year, which we're not at yet, but that's okay. Yeah, I designed that myself. It's pretty cool. I like it. 10 a.m. here on a rainy day. It's been absolutely peddling it down here in Edinburgh as well. In fact, it is still raining, and it is a good thing I have like an expander on this mic, because otherwise you'd be able to hear it, because it's absolutely hammering against that window over there. I'm gradually recovering from my flu. I've just got to get the hang of sleeping. At the moment, sleeping is just a non-event for me at the moment, because I have like a build-up of congestion on my chest, which makes sleeping just really uncomfortable. So I haven't mastered that yet, but hopefully I will be able to get that all cleared and I'll be able to actually sleep at night, which would be nice. All right, so we are 10 minutes in, and I would like to get going because we're down on numbers. So this gain staging method is something I kind of, when Studio One 4.5 launched, I discovered that the combination of the gain controls at the top of each of the channels, combine that with the pre-fader metering setting, and you've got yourself a smart little way of gain staging all of your channels. It doesn't matter how many channels you have, whether you have 5 or 205 channels of audio in your mix. You can do this really quickly and really easy, and the best part is you don't have to keep listening to the music over and over again, or even listen to each individual track. You can do this with your eyes, and it is the only time I would ever advocate doing anything mixing-wise with just your eyes on their own. But it's a great way to prepare your mix if you don't want to listen to the music before you get into your mix, which is kind of, I've always wanted to work like this, but of course it's never been possible. So you just have to kind of, because I much prefer to get into the mix when I'm actually starting to mix the song without actually having heard it, preferably, because it means that I'm not, when I'm gain staging and doing all the mix prep, I'm not being distracted by the song. I can just do everything else, and I don't feel tempted to go, right, let's just rattle on into the mix. I can compartmentalize my routine, how I do things, and that makes me work more efficiently and less distractedly. Because otherwise what can happen is I do a kind of rough balance, a rough gain stage, and then I start chucking plugins in, and before you know it, I've kind of half-assed the mix, and I don't like bringing a mix together that way. I like to be methodical. I like to do all the mix prep, and that includes gain staging first. And then I can come back to the project the next day or even a day after that, and then I can get into static mix and all of that, and then on into EQ and compression and everything else, and all of the ambient effects and everything else that goes into mixing. Listening to the song fresh. That's how I prefer to work. If I could, that is what I would do. Absolutely, Just Bob. You are spot on, my friend. Let's see. Cool. Okay. So let's get into that. Let's go and take a look at Studio One. I need to go over here and get the screen up. There we go. All right. So this is just something I have put together. It's not meant to be amazing. Okay. This is just a bunch of loops and a little kind of thing I did on the roads. That's it. But it's for demonstration purposes only, so don't kind of think that this is kind of a real-world example, because it really isn't. I'll play you a little bit of what it is so you can hear what it is, although it's completely irrelevant. It's not necessary. It's the process that's important here. All right, so you get the kind of the idea, and as you can see, I have already kind of chucked in a few plugins as well. This is kind of just something I pulled together for actually something completely different, but I thought, hey, we can actually apply this to this. So for what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to turn off all of the plugins. And it sounds kind of not quite so good without all of the plugins. Not that I actually have very much on there, but that's besides the point. The point is we're going to gain stage this sucker. I've even done a little static mix, but that's kind of irrelevant as well, because what we're going to do is we are going to do that, and we're going to pull all the faders down. I'm doing this on my Studio Live mixer in DAW mode, which is a super fun way to mix, by the way. If you've got a fader port 8 or a fader port 16, or you have a Studio Live mixer with DAW mode, this is a super fun way to do things. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make sure that we have pre-fader metering engaged, and I think that just you only have to click on one channel and it affects all of the channels. That's the first thing you have to do. And then the next thing you do is you play the track with everything down and off. So we're not getting any audio, and we're not distracted by any audio. Now, we only have 5 channels here. So we're going to set our platform to -6. But if I had a lot more, I would set this much higher. I would set this to maybe -12. Much lower, rather, not much higher. You know what I mean. I would set this to -12. If I have like 200 audio channels, then I would go down to -14 and set that as kind of my platform. Now, there is a lot of debate about, is gain staging relevant in the digital domain or not? Or is it only really an analog only thing? I'm not going to get into that debate. You guys can have that debate amongst yourselves. I'm not really going to get into that, because I could spend probably a month worth of shows on just that debate. And I don't think that's really worth our time. Suffice to say, for as much as I use the phrase gain staging, I tend to mean setting a level platform for everything. Now, some people may say, hey, that's just semantics. That is gain staging. Well, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There's, as I say, there's considerable debate on that subject. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to set these peaks here to -6. Now, there's a couple that are kind of already thereabouts, and then there's this one that isn't. This one that's a little over, and then this one that is peaking way up over, and we're going to use these gain controls to sort them out. So we will start on channel 1 because channel 1 is quite logical. This one only needs to go up a smidge, maybe 1 dB. There we go. And then this one is going to come down just a hair, half a dB. Yep. And let's have a look at the bass. Yeah, bass could do with coming up maybe 2 or 3. Yeah, that's a little bit better. 2.5. And then this one is peaking just a little bit over, so we'll turn this one down a little bit. Maybe a couple. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. And then finally, drums. They can come down quite a bit. And then we have everything more or less at around that -6 spot. And I'm only eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be ultra precise. Gain staging or platforming, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to be precise. It just has to be there or thereabouts. As close as you can eyeball it. And that really is it. Now, given there are only 5 channels of audio, that is going to be super fast. It doesn't take a lot of time. However, if you've got more audio channels, it's going to take a little bit more time. But for me, this is quicker than doing it the old way that I used to do it. The old way I used to do it would be a combination of using individual events and turning them down. Let's just open these up a little bit. You know, I would select particular events, and I would maybe adjust the gain with the gain handles and that kind of thing. You know, like I'd maybe grab this and pull this down, and I'd maybe pull that one up a little bit. You know, I could do it like that, but the thing with doing it this way is you're either doing it by ear, or you have to keep on flitting between the console over here to watch what the level is, or you have to have the inspector open and do it this way. And this is perfectly viable, and I know that a lot of people do this. A lot of people do it this way. They just have this section open and the inspector open, and that's how they do it. And they maybe use the gain controls in this area, and because they can see their meter, and that's absolutely fine. That is actually a pretty legit way to do it, because then you can just hop between channels and you can turn them up, turn them down, do whatever you want with the inspector open. That's actually not a bad way to do it. And that way you're only adjusting one tiny little thing. I would certainly agree with that, and it's certainly a lot better than constantly hopping between here and here all the time. That's just going to get annoying. And to be honest, I don't use the inspector very much. And maybe back in the old days, I should have. Because for the most part, I would be constantly flitting between there and there and there and there. Okay, I need to turn that up a little bit more. Okay, now I need to turn this one down. And that's how I would work. And I actually got fairly good at it with the old fader port that I had, because the old fader port, the silver one, had a button on it that would open and close the mixer view. The new fader port sadly does not have that. They took that away, much to my consternation. But I don't think a lot of people were using that mixer button, that mixer view button on the fader port in the same way that I was. I used it all the time. I found it incredibly useful, but they took that away. The only way you can access that now is by using the shift function. And to me, that's kind of a little clumsy, because you have to press shift and then press F3 on the new fader port, whereas you actually had a dedicated button for it before. Bit of a shame, but it is what it is, and I'm not going to complain about it. And Tony Stringer is here. He says, hi, sorry I'm late. That's okay, Tony. We're just getting into this kind of little demo. You can catch up with it in a wee while. Just Bob says, I've noticed you have to check a box to get that knob for gain on each song. Is there a way to get it set automatically to be turned on for every new song? I don't think you can as yet. I agree. It would be awesome if it was always checked. Where is that little sucker? There it is. Input controls. Because if you start a new song, we go back to the start page, and we go new song, we go okay, and we add a bunch of tracks. Let's say 9, and we autocolor them. And then we go over to the mixer. Those automatically open, which I find a bit annoying. But the other thing is the input controls aren't automatically selected. Bob is quite correct. So it'd be nice if those were automatically there, and you didn't, kind of like as you can see, the first thing I had to do starting a new session is close those windows over here that default as open, and the input controls I had to turn on. I'm not sure if there is a way to make that automatic. Maybe if you save that as a template, maybe it will be the case that this actually opens like this with everything set how you want it. It's possible that saving as a template will do that for you, Bob, but I don't tend to use templates that much, to be really honest. I like to kind of lay things out. It's just me. I come from the old console days where you actually had to set things up on the console. I learned on an SSL-E and a Neve console. That's what I learned to mix on way back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so that was it. That was what I learned on. So when you had a new song, a new session to mix, you had to set everything up manually. And I guess that's my thing. So even in the digital domain, I like to do that. I don't like to have a template where everything is just set and it's just ready to bring in audio and go. And that's maybe just because it's an old habit of mine. You probably could do it with a macro as well, Bob, actually. I dare say you probably could. I've never done it, but you probably could. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. If there's a keyboard shortcut for it, then there's probably... let's see, let's go input. Show inputs. No, oh, there you go, show input controls, right there. So you could probably assign that and then map that to a macro. There you go, channel components, show input controls, and that will do it. So map that to a macro, and then you can bind that to a key. You're done. That would definitely work. So there you go. And then you've got it in your macro toolbar. And then when you're starting a brand new song, you open the mixer, you go, bing, done. So that would definitely work. But let's go back to this guy over here. So now that we've gain staged, or game platformed, or whatever you want to call it, I would then save this and close it. And then I'd come back to it either 24 or 48 hours later, and then I would get into the mix. And of course, these plugins just wouldn't be there. But as I say, this is a session I'm kind of borrowing because I like the groove and for no other reason. But once I've got to that point and I've done all the gain stage, then the next day I would come in and I'd select all my channels and is it control click or shift click? I think it's shift. No, it's control click. There you go. Control click to zero out all your faders to 0, and then you can kind of go and do your static mix from there. Or I know some people like to do this. Some people prefer to do their static mix with everything down to 0, and then they just gradually bring things in. So you can do it that way. So hey, we could start over on this side, and we could start just playing the track. And at this point, I would turn off the pre-fader metering. And there you are, done. Now, because I've already got those plugins already in place, it actually sounds pretty good, and I could probably just export this as a first draft and then leave it at that and then come back to it and, you know, sweeten up a little bit. But there you go. That's pretty much it, guys. So we're back over here now in the Christmas lounge. I'm tempted to call it that from here on out. I'm tempted to call this the Christmas lounge. Maybe that's what I should have at the top up there somewhere. The Christmas lounge or something. I don't know. It's an idea. So there we go. Hope that was helpful. Old School Funk and Soul is here. Didn't see you in the chat to start with. I must have missed you. Sorry about that. You said, true, I've rushed my mixes because of either time or resources. Yeah, I've done that myself quite a few times. You actually asked a question in another video, and I don't recall what that question was. Can you maybe go over to that video and copy and paste it into the chat here, and then we can deal with that question? That would be pretty cool if you could do that. Let me just grab some tea in my Christmas mug. Bobby Booth says, I usually do a static mix to a mix, then I add the plugins. I'm assuming by that you are saying that you do a static mix to a reference track, am I right? Is that what you mean by you do a static mix to a mix? Do you do your static mix to a reference track, or is that what you mean? But yes, I mean, when I do my static mix, there are no plugins at all. I don't get into plugins for quite some time into the mix. I like to try and do things with mostly the faders and with the panning. To start with, to get things placed where I want them, and to get things balanced how I want them, and then the other secret sauce kicks in. And there's a lot of debate about this one as well, and that is mixing in mono. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? There are some people that say, yeah, you shouldn't really do it. And then there are some people that say, yes, you absolutely should. Well, I'm one of these people that would say, yes, you probably should. And here's my reason for saying that. And that is when you collapse things to mono. Now, here's the thing to understand. And this is where some people misunderstand what mixing in mono is all about. You're not mixing in mono to present a mono final product, because nobody listens in mono anymore, and certainly haven't done since the early 60s. So what is it about? This whole mixing in mono thing is so that you are able to get the clearest and the best separation between all of the elements in your mix. And you're not being deceived by pushing things far out left or far out wide and thinking you have separation. Because sometimes you don't. All you've done is just push them apart, but they're still fighting and competing for frequency space. Whether it's far left or far right, they're still competing for frequencies, and this can certainly be the case if you have lots of guitars, for example, or lots of keyboard instruments, or lots of background vocals. If you've got a whole choir, for example, that's a lot of human voices with certain frequency build-ups in certain spots. Now, you can pan them all left, you can pan them all right, and just get them out the way of each other in stereo, but here's the kicker. The kicker is that your end user may not be listening on headphones or in the sweet spot of this kind of triangle like you are when you're in your mix position. They may be listening either on the speaker of a cell phone, or they're listening on a hi-fi unit, and the hi-fi unit may be in a completely different room. For example, end users most likely will put the music on one of those speakers, what they call those Bose speakers, which basically it just sends wirelessly an MP3 from your phone to the speaker. The speaker may be in the lounge, and you may well be in the kitchen doing tidying up, or doing the dishes, or making dinner. Well, here's the thing. The sound comes out of that Bose speaker, and it probably comes out stereo. But by the time it has bounced off of every parallel surface, before it gets to your ears, it has collapsed to mono. Okay? That's different from a concert venue. In a concert venue, wherever you're sitting, you're going to get one bias or the other a little bit because of reflections. And actually, if you're sitting on the far left, you will eventually get reflections off of the right-hand wall that will come to you to make up the balance of the stereo field. But it kind of doesn't really work that way in a domestic situation. And so that's where most people are listening. So by the time it's got to them, they're not listening in a treated room like you are. They're listening in a completely non-treated environment. With lots of parallel and reflective surfaces, and sometimes they'll stuff the speaker in a corner of the room, which is where you're going to get the biggest bass build-up. And so, automatically where the speaker is placed in the room for your end user, it's going to change the balance of the frequency response that they hear anyway. All right, so by the time they hear it, it's collapsed to mono. But if you've got audio sources that are competing for space in the frequency spectrum, and you have some cancellation because of that, one cancelling out the other, you will find that by the time it's collapsed to mono, that certain of those elements of your mix, which are gloriously balanced in stereo, suddenly no longer are. Unless you have done this mix phase in mono. If it sounds great in mono, you can be guaranteed that when you open it up to stereo, it's going to sound glorious. And everything will be heard, and everything will be in its proper place and proper balance. Which means that when your end user is in the kitchen and their stereo system is in the lounge, that collapse to mono thing is not going to be a problem because you've balanced it in mono to start with. So you've fixed that end user problem at the source with the mix in mono. So you separate everything out in your mix in mono, and it means that when you put it out to stereo, everything is wonderfully separated, better separated than if you'd done the whole thing in stereo and just gone, I'm going to shove that guitar over there and that guitar over there. Never the twain shall meet. It'll be fine. Well, no, it won't necessarily, because when it's collapsed to mono, those two guitars are going to cancel each other out. If they've got the same kind of build-up, they're going to cancel each other out. So, doing it in mono and complementary EQ are your best friends, in my opinion, when it comes to mixing. And it's not because mixing in mono is delivering a mono final product. It isn't. You are delivering a stereo final product, and that is what the end user will listen to. They will hear a stereo final product. It's just that you are doing the vast bulk of your mix in mono so that everything is best separated out, and you are fixing your phase correlation problems, and you are fixing your EQ imbalances between the different elements of your mix, and you're doing that up front. So that the end user has, they can hear every single element of every aspect of every instrument and every voice in the whole song from start to finish, because that's what they want to hear, and that's what they should hear. So that's why I advocate mixing in mono. So there you go. Feel free to disagree with me. I am absolutely cool with that. Okay, Bobby says I don't usually use a reference mix. Yeah, kind of neither do I, but I certainly did early on in my mixing career. I definitely did. Early on. And sometimes, occasionally, if there is a specific snare drum sound that I really like on a particular song, and I'm like, I love that snare drum sound, and I think this song that I'm working on would sound great if the snare drum sounded similar to that. Then I will bring in that song and I will use it to that effect. Will the reference track stay in the song for the whole mix? Probably not. Just enough for me to be able to get the snare drums to sound similar to each other. And that would be a reason to use one now, even, all of these years down the road. Let's see. Bobby says, I usually do a static mix and then I add the plugins. Yes. Mr. Devotion says, mixing in mono will identify phase issues. Yes, it most certainly will. Here we go. Here's the question from old school funk and soul. He says, your Studio One 5.1 video, are these updates in the artist version? There are some things that are definitely in the artist version. And there are some things that are definitely not in the artist version. However, third-party plugins are definitely a thing that you have available to you in Studio One 5. For sure. Now, if you are still unsure as to what should or should not be there, then it's pretty easy what you can do. You can go to presonus.com and you can go to Studio One. And you can also go down to the compare versions chart. And you can't see it, but you will in a second. Here we go. So we're on the presonus.com/products/Studio One/compare-versions page. And you can scroll, you can come down here and you can see what is and is not in Studio One Artist. So you have advanced audio editing, advanced grouping, arranger track, articulations and key switches, yes. Automatic latency compensation, you get the aux channels, browser obviously. You don't get the chord track, but you do get the new clip gain envelopes, comping console, control link, QMix, drag and drop workflow, drum editor, editable folder tracks, you get events based effects, exchange, extended effects change, you don't get. You don't get groove extraction, high DPI graphics, everybody gets that. Input mixer, everybody gets that. Layers and takes, yes. You don't get the listen bus. You don't get the mix engine effects, and you don't get the scenes. But you do get MP3 export, and you do get send to MTC MMC sync. But in the professional version, you can send and follow. You do not get note effects. You do get Notion integration. That means the score editor, score view thing. Pattern editor, you don't get the project page. You don't get rewire. Oh, you do, sorry, get rewire support. You get, everybody gets retrospective recording. Oh, hello. Use score view with printing. Yeah, I'm incorrect. Notion integration means that you can send to Notion. And you can receive from Notion, but you don't get the score view. Yeah, so if you have a song that you want to create into a score, you can send to Notion if you have Notion, and you can receive audio or MIDI from Notion into Studio One, but you don't get the score view. You don't get Scratchpad, and you don't get the show page. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of things you get. You don't get the search filter options. Oh, hello, there's a mistake there. Somebody please remind me to get the web guys to correct that tomorrow. There should be a blue dot. At least one for the new track channel search filter options. If you're in Studio One Artist, you can check that out. To see if you have that or not. If you don't have it, then you don't have it. But certainly in Professional, you do have it. So there should be at least a blue dot here. I don't know why that got missed off, but it did. And then you get everything else down here. You get basic ampere, which basically means you only get 1 amp and 1 cab. You don't get console shaper. You don't get groove delay. You don't get the impulse response maker. You get a trial version of Melodyne Essentials. You don't get the multi-dynamics, you don't get open air, you don't get pedal board, you don't get pipeline, but you get all the rest. So there you go. I hope that gives you a good enough review of what you get in Studio One Artist. Obviously, there was one mistake there that we spied. So somebody please remind me in the chat that I need to talk to the web guys tomorrow and get that fixed. Maybe you're referring to Bluetooth speakers. Bluetooth speakers, thank you. Yes, that's what I was talking about. Technology that I'm clearly unfamiliar with. And you're quite correct. Sometimes people will listen to a single speaker, so it will be in mono anyway. If you're listening on a single Bluetooth speaker, that it'll either be mono or it'll be fake stereo. Sometimes those single speakers are fake stereo. They kind of have some kind of widening thing going on built into it. But yeah. So Bluetooth speakers. That's what I was talking about. Ken says, I never truly understood bass build-up until I played a gig on a very small stage where I was crunched in the corner of the room and all I heard was bass. Yeah, exactly. That is classic bass build-up on a stage where all you can hear is the kick drum and the bass guitar and pretty much nothing else. Bass tends to build up in the corners of a room. For the most part, that's where it kind of builds up, and it tends to build up there and then kind of travel along a wall. Somebody's trying to message me. Thank you, Ken. You took me literally. I appreciate that. Yes. Yeah, that's bass build up, and it's classic, and you get it a lot in square or rectangular rooms, although not. Sometimes you can get it if there are no parallel surfaces as well. Like I've played in I've played in churches where they have like this kind of little curved space at the back, which is meant to be kind of built-in amplification, built into the building itself. Back in the days when there were no PA, there were no microphones, and so the only way you could do it was actually learn how to support your voice and project your voice to the back of the church, and you had a little bit of help from the room itself, from, you know, the pulpit being in this little curved space area behind you, and that would help project your voice. It would help amplify it because it would create a little reverberation chamber. So yeah, bass builds up in those kind of spaces, which is why it's a good idea to acoustically treat your room, particularly with bass trapping in the corners. I have quite cheap and nasty acoustic treatment at the moment because we are renting, but hopefully we will next year be able to buy a house, and when we can buy a house, I will be investing in some much better quality, much more expensive, obviously, acoustic treatment. Because at the moment I have like that 2-inch kind of corrugated foam stuff that I got from, where is it I got it from? It's not Auralex, it's another company similar to Auralex, but they're a little bit cheaper. And so I got that stuff from them. Let's see. My room, Music to Motion says, my room suffers from bass build-up, so before I spend money on real proper treatment, I'm trying the SonarWorks Reference 4. I'm hoping it'll help my mix translate better. SonarWorks 4 is extremely powerful software. It's incredible, because if you do the room, if you do the setup for it correctly, with the reference microphone, it will listen to your room and you calibrate it against the speakers first, so it knows what your speakers are like, and then once it's detected what your speakers are like, then the next step is to listen. The reference mic will listen to your speakers in the context of your room, and it will determine where the build-ups are, be that bass or low mids or upper mids or highs. It will detect where those build-ups and where you also have standing waves and null points. Null points are a big thing. My old room, which was much smaller than this, had a null point where if you stand kind of maybe a couple of feet behind this chair, suddenly everything at about 400 would disappear. There would be no 400 hertz in that spot. If you move in front of it, you hear the 400 hertz. If you move behind it, you hear the 400 hertz. But in that little spot, 400 hertz was cancelled out by reflections. And so I put a lot of treatment into that room, and amazingly, magically, these bits of foam prevented that that cancellation from happening, and suddenly I had 400 hertz again. It was amazing. The difference was night and day, I can tell you. It's due to how many feet per particular frequency truly is, and the reflections are in phase in some parts of the room and out of phase in others. That is correct. The corners are nearest to two reflection points. Yes, because they're at 90-degree angles for the most part. Most people's rooms are either rectangular or square, and so the joints of a wall are going to be at 90 degrees. So yeah, you're right. I bought one for my birthday. On the 8th, I'm going to unbox it in the next few days. Cool. Just Bob says, Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, Robert Holford, and others have always said, don't sing to the first row, sing to the very last row. They are who need to hear acoustics aside, very opera-orientated. That is absolutely correct. Whether you're singing opera or heavy rock or singing jazz or pop, doesn't matter. Even if you have a microphone, you need to learn to support your voice correctly so that you can project, even without a microphone. To my mind, when you're performing with a microphone, the microphone's job is to enhance what you already have and give it to the people at the very back row. But your aim should be to naturally provide it without straining your vocal cords, because you support it with your diaphragm muscles in particular, and with good breathing and learning to phrase correctly. Those three things combined will give you a lot more volume, and then when you're singing into the microphone is just adding to what's already there. It's just, giving a little boost to what is already there volume-wise naturally in your voice. And it means that the microphone is going to best capture the whole frequency range of your voice much better. So, yeah, Bruce and Robert are absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. But yeah, it's not off topic. It's kind of related to rooms, and we kind of are talking a little bit about rooms and a little bit about room acoustics. But yeah, you're quite right. Let's see, what else do we have? John Lake says, sounds like a haunted room. I'm not quite sure what that means, John. You're going to have to explain yourself, buddy. But yes, there we go. So that's rooms, and a little bit about mixing in mono as well, which is kind of another thing that I talk about. And he couldn't. Oh, okay. Martin Weeks said to say hello to everyone. He couldn't make it tonight. Martin, if you're watching the replay, I hope you get better soon. If you're feeling under the weather, but kind of if you're otherwise occupied, I hope you're doing well and having a good time and having a good weekend. And hopefully we'll catch up with you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. That'd be cool. So there we go. We have 17 people. We peaked at around about 20 at one point. So, has anyone got any other questions? Otherwise, we will call it a night here, if that's the case. It'd be nice if we could make it to the whole hour, because as I say, I prefer to do my hour-long shows. They're much more fun than just like a 45-minute deal. But yeah, just a quick reminder. Next week will be the Christmas special. And then the week after that, we will do a review of the year. And so for both of those shows, be thinking about kind of what you're looking forward to about Christmas and what you're looking forward to musically, even though we can't play gigs, but, you know, what you're looking forward to musically about Christmas and what you intend to be doing music-wise over Christmas. And then we'll review the year on the following Sunday, the 27th, and we'll take a look back at 2020 and definitely bring your highlights and type them into the chat. Your highlights, your lowlights, best bits, things that you've learned, things that you can take forward into 2021. That's what we'll make, not next week's show, but the last show of the year on the 27th. We'll make that all about that. I will have a whole bunch of things to say about that. So, yeah. Used Emotion says, here's a question for you. I bought a Motu rack mount interface, and I'm curious if latency will be better if I use 5-pin DIN for my new USB controller or go USB. I will have my other hardware since hooked up with the 5-pin DIN. I have the QS300, this guy here, which is not switched on at the moment. But it has very, very low latency, and it's plugged in via the MIDI cable into the back of my Studio 1824. And it really has pretty low latency on this computer. On my old computer, when I had the AudioBox USB, I had a little bit more latency to deal with, and so on that old computer, which was a Windows 7 machine, with the AudioBox USB, I used the Green Z, and the Green Z totally did away with, I would say, a good 98% of the latency that I had from this old guy, which is 28 years old now. I think it's 28. No, 26 years old. 26 or 27, something like that. It's old, it's elderly. And so the latency with the Green Z on my old computer with the AudioBox was actually pretty good. It was definitely playable, definitely manageable. What I do now, I will show you. So let's go back to Studio One. And I'll show you kind of where things are at for me. So if I go Studio One, Options, and if I go to Audio Setup, at the moment I have, there is Studio USB, I have my device block size set to 256, which gives me input of 10.3, output of 8.5. And you're probably thinking 10.3? Yeah, you can't play with that. Well, actually I can. But here's the thing. If I go to processing, I have the dropout protection down low. I'm still using the 32-bit precision, but I have these guys both checked. Use low latency monitoring for instruments. Use native low latency monitoring instead of hardware monitoring. So I'm not monitoring through the 1824, although you can do, and that's great for audio. For audio, monitoring through your hardware is good, unless you're wanting to use an amp sim, in which case you won't hear the amp sim if you do that. If you're using an amp sim, you need the native Studio One low latency for hardware monitoring. So you need this checked, not unchecked. And as you can see, the low latency with the Blue Z for audio gives me less than 0. And of course, it's not available for instrument because I'm using the native low latency for instruments. So, yeah, so that's why my latency is pretty much non-existent. And that's just with the Studio 1824. If you have the Quantum and you're using Thunderbolt, you will get something way, way faster. My good friend and colleague, Eric Welch at Presonus, has two Quantums daisy-chained together. He has two Quantum 2s daisy-chained together. And going into those into the computer, back out, and out to monitor mixes, he has a round trip latency of what did he tell me it was? 0.65 of a millisecond. 0.65 of a millisecond with the quantums. And I don't have that. I just have the Studio 1824, but I have an i7 processor on this computer. My other one was an i5, so it's a little bit slower, and this one is a little bit faster. It's nice i7, I think it's nearly 4 gigahertz processor, so it processes a lot faster, and so because it works a lot faster, I have a lot less latency. So latency is going to depend upon your computer, how much processing power you have available for Studio One and for your hardware. So I hope that helps answer that question. But as I say, I'm using the MIDI 5-pin DIN cable. Works really well for me. But my Atom SQ is going in via USB because there is no MIDI connection on this guy. And it's actually pretty cool. I can cancel that. And I can go drag an instrument in, and I can show you kind of the difference. If I bring in presence here, and we'll just pick something at random. Let's go organ drawbar. There we go. That'll do nicely. Now we'll record arm and monitor. Oh, hang on. I pressed the wrong channel. All that. Hang on, what's going on here? Turn that off. Oh, hang on. I know what I've done. I've messed this up. I've messed this up. Let's do that again. There we go. Now we'll go back and we'll do, what was it I picked? Doesn't matter. We'll just pick this one. There we go. There we go. And you're not even looking at the screen. Okay, so I've got the organ in here. Let me get the other keyboard on. As well, takes a second or two to power up. But this is the Atom SQ. Latency is pretty much non-existent via USB. Yep. I will do, Mike. Appreciate it. So that's the Atom SQ. Pretty much zero latency. And pretty much zero latency with the much older Yamaha QS300. Sounds pretty good to me, and it's actually really easy to play as well. So yeah, so that works pretty smartly, to be honest. With pretty much no latency whatsoever. And that's with just the way my system is set up now. So it works pretty nicely. So I hope that helps answer that question on latency. Depends on how fast your interface is and how fast your, where your block size is set and on your computer as well. So combination of those, and hopefully you'll find the right combo that gives you the best latency. I might try going with MIDI cables so they all go through the same one interface. Yeah, that might work. That might well work. I just started going by my new business venture name, but it's still the same sarcastic and nefarious me. Good. Glad to hear it. Sarcasm is allowed here because it's my native language. It's what I speak first of all. My mother tells me that my first words out of my mouth were sarcastic, and it's been that way ever since. Here we are, 40-something years later. You're welcome, and thank you for the $5 donation. That is very kind and generous, and I appreciate it very, very much. So let's get back over there. Thank you very much, and we are out of time for tonight's show. I hope you found it all useful and helpful. I've certainly had a lot of fun doing this show tonight. So as I say, next week, punch the mic again. Next week, Christmas special. Come with your Christmas thoughts and your Christmas wishes and desires for music gear. And if you like, you can kind of have a kind of fantasy world where wives and responsibilities don't exist, and you can bring those particular wishes as well as your more realistic ones. That would be cool. That would be fun to talk about. All right, so I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified over on the Home Studio Trainer channel, and then we'll be back here for Christmas special. So I will see you then. Yeah, I always get one of those, Mike. I have a particular individual who watches every one of my shows religiously and hits the dislike button. I have no idea who it is, and I don't really care who it is, to be honest, because here's the thing that they don't understand about the YouTube algorithm. Even if you leave a dislike, it actually helps. It does. It actually helps the algorithm. Believe it or not, whether if you're disliking, it does that. I don't know why, but it does. Anyway, folks, I will see you all next week. Good night, everybody.